Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 339 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. I'm your host, Anthony Renda. The show notes are located at my site, ContinueFit.com or StrengthCoachPodcast.com. All right, today on the StrengthCoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about his upcoming lecture at the Perform Better Summit in Providence, and that is the cost of exercise. Now, for the most part, he was talking originally about the orthopedic cost, but we were just kind of looking at it more than an orthopedic cost and, could it affect the heart? So we kind of went a little bit deeper into that. There was a forum thread about power without med balls. So asked him if we can get some upper body power with bands if we don't have the med balls. And we expanded a little bit more on his ideas about pre-game and pre-workout drinks. He's been talking a lot about that on Twitter, so I wanted to go over that. All right, Naamly, it's the member experience platform for modern training gyms. It puts all of your communication with your members in one place, allowing you to keep track of that communication, which is so important for retention. Go to Naamly.com, Naamly.com. You can schedule a demo to get a feel for what it's all about. Use the referral code Strength Coach to get started on your free 30-day trial. All right, for the Naamly Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, I have on Dr. Emily Splichal. She's the creator of the Barefoot Training Specialist certification. She's the CEO and founder of Naboso Technology. And we're going to go deep on the feet today. She has what she calls the 3 pillars of foot training, which is mobility, strength, and sensory stimulation. So we took a deep dive on all 3 and what we as fitness pros can do with our clients to optimize the foot. We went into some barefoot science, what she calls foot to core integration, and we even did an exercise while you can do at home if you're listening on the computer that she calls short foot, and we're just going to go over that. So I actually did it while I was interviewing her, so good stuff. All right, for the KISS marketing business secrets for gym owners, Vince Gabriel talks about what fake work looks like, which is basically all that stuff that's necessary, not aligned with what or where you want to go. KISS Marketing is a digital marketing agency that helps fitness business owners make the big bucks from their marketing without feeling stupid, stressed, or wasting valuable time figuring it out on your own. If you need some help with your marketing, head over to kissmarketing.net. Book a free coaching call with Will Matheson. That is Vince Gabriel's secret marketing weapon. For the Getting Started with VBT or Velocity-Based Training, brought to you by Perch, a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. The cameras effortlessly quantify weight room performance without detracting from it. This week, Nika's going to go over periodization, programming, and velocity-based training. All right, we got Jenny Rearick back on for this month. She's going to do in a couple segments for the Fit to Speak segment. In today's segment, she's going to share 5 presentation tips you've probably never heard before. And if you're tired of the same replayed advice on how to give a presentation, you'll really like this segment. Now, guys, in my book, Be Like the Best, Coach Boyle said he attributed most of his success to writing and speaking. And it's just really the best way to get your name out there. Presenting is a skill that you can learn to master, and Jenny is the best, in my opinion. Her Speakers League is coming up. It is a 12-week virtual cohort where she teaches and coaches and trainers how to create and deliver great presentations. That starts on August 22nd. Registration ends on August 15th. Go to fit-to-speak.com. Check it out. Sign up. You will not regret it. Guys, the huge summer sale is going on right now at Perform Better. 40% off a ton of items. Don't miss the last summit of the year, August 26th to 28th in Providence, Rhode Island. I had a blast in Chicago. I appreciate everybody coming out to my lecture, people coming up to me and just kind of appreciating the podcast and all that. So I really love when people do that and they come up. So guys, don't miss Providence. It's the best one usually. every year. Lots of heavy hitters there. Check it out at performbetter.com. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. You can try out the new StrengthCoach.com for 7 days for free. Totally new format, user-friendly, same great forum. If you tried it about a month ago and you got a little discouraged, don't be discouraged. They've been upgrading every day, adding stuff, fixing, making it even more user-friendly. So, don't give up on it. It's, I know for me, for 15 years, looking at the same platform, then you change. It's always a little tough, but check it out. There is a free 7-day trial. So good stuff. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right, hanging in there. Got back from Chicago last weekend. Saw a bunch of, I saw Brendan, I saw Marco, Jaron Coopersmith, Frank Dolan were there. I mean, it's always amazing to go there. I'm so bummed. I know you're going. You're the one Perform Better you're doing is in Providence. It's coming up in a couple weeks. So you're going to be talking about the cost of exercise, right?
Exactly. Yes, that lovely orthopedic cost talk that everybody enjoyed on Twitter so much.
I wasn't even planning on this, but one of I've been talking to some people about this, and maybe I'll do a little public service announcement even right now. I am going for an echo stress test today because, I've been super tired for some weird reason, but it's weird. Not when I'm doing activities or not when I'm like around a lot of people, but I had a friend who passed away, heart attack, better shape than I am, a year ago. And as you know, our good friend Rhonda Cat, her husband Peter, passed away from a heart attack in his sleep. I think it was about 7 years ago or five or 6 years ago. And she's been a huge advocate for men, really kind of, looking in their health. And I think this crowd it's a great example because there's people like you or I who've been, played sports or been through things or injuries. And then, when you get to that age around 40 and, I'm 55 and you're feeling like, you still feel a little invincible, but I was like, it can't be my heart. There's no way. And two doctors have now confirmed that there's absolutely, your blood pressure, your EKGs, your resting heart rate, your cholesterol is the LDL is not great, but the HDL is super high. So they were talking more about the ratio, but I wanted to do a stress test, the nuclear one. He wouldn't let me do it because he's like, look, it's too much radiation for somebody who has absolutely. I tried to throw in the family history stuff. My mom passed away of a heart attack. My heart disease. My dad had put stents put in. My younger brother had a stroke, but it's all lifestyle related, like smoking, et cetera. They don't have the lifestyle I had, never smoked. So anyway, my public service announcement is if you're feeling something, man, just go get it looked at, even if you don't feel like it. But one of the things I was talking to somebody about, Mike, was this cost of exercise. Like is this strain of trying to lift heavy weights for X amount of time? And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with trying to get stronger, but do you feel like there's that piece of it too, like from that health perspective? Now that you got older, you were a power lifter back in the day. Do you feel like besides the orthopedic piece that there's even more to it?
Well, it's interesting. I wonder more about the really stressful cardiac stuff, Tabata style stuff, really hard.
Yeah.
Because honestly, and this is turning into a hard episode, which we didn't want it to, but I basically flunked my last stress test in the sense that I got, the highest score you could get, but they were kind of like, oh, can you wait for a few minutes? I'm like, why? I'm fine. And they were like, oh, just hang around. We just have to have the doctor look at your results. And I was kind of like, what's that about? But my, the wave pattern that they're looking at was saying that I was ischemic and that I should have been getting chest pains and, that I'm starting to show some signs of occlusion. And I was like, I don't feel a thing. Like I don't have any chest pain. I've had my heart rate higher than that, but I do get a ton of irregular heartbeats. So I'm the same as you. I ended up having not a nuclear, but I had I think it's called a CT MRI or something. It's basically some thing where they run a dye through your whole body and look at all of your vessels. And 7 years ago, I was completely clear, no plaque. And now 7 years later, I'm like a 2 out of 5. And they finally made me go on a statin. So you're right. I guess the point being, there's a lot that we don't know about the effects of intense exercise on people, because if you think about it, exercise, and this people say that's not true, but exercise started in the 70s. Let's be honest. The aerobic boom. The people, like when I started lifting weights, it was an odd subgroup of bodybuilders that lifted weights. There were no health clubs. All that stuff started in the 80s when I was in college. Corporate fitness started and the aerobic boom started and people started running. And so we don't really know. We're just probably seeing the end of that first generation. And what we see a lot of the steroid users that are dying, but people look at that and think, oh, they were lifetime steroid users. And you're like, yeah, they were. Now, I don't know. Does that correlate? I'm not sure. But I think you're seeing some people that probably had reduced lifespan as a result of the lifestyle. I won't say it was heavy strength training. I'll just say the lifestyle that they led, which might have been related to drug use. It's difficult to say. So I think the bottom line, I thought I would have told you 7 years ago when I had that first, and it's not a stress test. It's basically like you're in an MRI. So I think it is called a CT MRI. I should look it up. And you get like a calcium score. You get all this stuff. But the cardiologist said, you got a heart like a kid. He said, you have no plaque. You have nothing to worry about. 7 years later, they're like, you got a little something to worry about. And so who knows? And what I'm finding now is that the intense exercise is what gives me the irregular heartbeat. So what I've been trying to do, which drives me crazy, is trying to not get my heart rate over 150. So now what I have to do is I'm playing games with myself in terms of, okay, how fast can I ride 2 miles and not break 150?
Wow.
How fast can I ride 2 miles? Because I can ride 2 miles on the Airdyne significantly faster, and I'm going to try to do more Zone 2 stuff. I hate Zone 2 stuff. Absolutely friggin' despise it. But I rode a road bike the other day with my wife for probably 30 minutes.
Yeah. Which
I haven't done in a really long time. So I think people, you don't want to be overconfident about the benefits of exercise. And I don't, and this is, it goes back to the whole argument. There's a cost, and there's maybe a cost-benefit ratio in terms of people who work out are way better off than people who don't work out. But people who work out really hard are probably not better off than people who exercise moderately. And I think that's where we get into the orthopedic cost disagreement. People, I had Twitter, going crazy when I said there was an orthopedic cost to exercise, but I have trouble looking at people and saying, when you do heavy bench presses and heavy back squats and heavy hang cleans and all this stuff, if you're going to tell me that that doesn't create some wear and tear, I'm going to vigorously disagree with you. I'm going to say it absolutely does, because I lived it.
Yeah.
Does more moderate sort of, people love to call it functional training, but whatever it is that we're doing, this kind of joint friendly, non-1 RM oriented type of training may be a different thing. Sorry, I know we've had this just really long segue now into a...
No, but it is, the thing is that I think there's this cost of training is not just orthopedic. I just wonder, because again, with my buddy Freddie, he was in great shape, but he really approached it as like a balls out every time. So doing the Murph and doing this and kind of very loved David Goggins and kind of pushing it. It's funny, I have Doug Kajikian on. We're talking to him tomorrow. He's going to be on the next episode. And Doug was a pararescue guy. So don't talk to him. Those guys are more badass than Navy SEALs, and they go through a lot more for a lot longer period of time. And we're going to talk a little bit about this mental toughness idea and this military tactical influence on things. And we're starting to kind of see this. no pain, no pain idea, like getting thrown out the window. Like, no, you got to have some pain. And so I just feel like we're kind of heading back in that direction a little bit. And I just feel like there's some stuff here that look, bottom line, moderation is the key. So, hey, should we have some zone 2? Yes, we should. Should we have some high intense stuff? I was even worried when I was doing crash Bs a little bit here and there, right? Because it's 7 minutes of really just being at your highest heart rate. So you worry about that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's you've got to wonder if I'm making my heart beat at a really, really high rate, really, really intensely for a quote unquote long period of time. Is that really good for my heart? Like, what is there benefit there? Or is there wear? And as I said, I think the problem with all this stuff, and this is why I get so, people argue with me about, the research, but I've lived through stages of research so many stages where we thought things were true, and then we ended up realizing that they weren't true. And that's problematic when suddenly you think, that research the quality of that ended up not being what we expected, or it ended up that there was some bias that was injected into that research, or it ended up that it was a bias based on that person's likes or dislikes. It's really hard to accept anything at face value from me at this stage of my life, having seen what I've seen over time.
Yeah, and I think there's I think the biggest point here is what you said earlier is we're so new. This stuff is so new. 80s, so where this culture has kind of become so ingrained in our society, and okay, now we really don't know what the hell we're talking about, and we haven't had enough time to really get a really good idea of what maybe some of this stuff, what the best way to do some of this stuff is. But
I would agree, and that's why I said I think it's very I think all of the people who are in the I know category are, I would say, be prepared to be wrong, because you're probably going to find out that somewhere down the road you're going to be apologizing to somebody for something that you did or said or whatever it was.
And as I ask the next question, we'll say what Thomas Myers said when he came to Perform Better. 50% of what I'm about to tell you is probably wrong. Problem is, I just don't know which 50% it is. So, Coach.
That's so true.
It is. Coach, Abby asked a question on the forum. Just wanted to get quick thoughts on this. Upper body power without med balls. Kevin was talking about some stuff. He had a nice answer, but really about with cables. He showed it with the Kaiser. Obviously, now we have the Anchor. It's pretty accessible to get those. What are your thoughts on using some of the bands? I know you don't love them from a safety perspective if they're going to snap, but just never mind that piece of it from the perspective of can we get some good power training with the band, some speed training that way?
I don't think so, no. I really don't. I think there's so many logistical problems that come with bands that I don't see it. And that's why just as I was getting on the phone with you, responded to that thread. And what I wanted to know was, is it a wall space issue? Like, what stops you from doing it? Because we've done chest pass into the floor. We've done slams. The one thing that you really find that's difficult is the rotary stuff in terms of rotary power without a wall. But I think even without walls, if you've got a floor and you can slam a ball and you've got a floor and you can chest pass that ball into the floor, then you can get some upper body power that way with medicine balls. So I'll be curious to see what his holdup is. Like, why we're still doing it with our athletes, but we can't do it with our general population people. And same thing, medicine ball bench, having somebody laying on the floor, dropping the ball. Like, there seems to be ways to do it. The one thing that you don't get, or that is difficult to get, is that rotational power component. And I don't think there is a good substitute. And the problem, like I said, with bands is those bands are going to wear out, and they're going to wear out faster if you start doing power stuff with them. And I still don't think it's great. I don't think you get great power because as you're lengthening the band, the tension is increasing. Whereas when we think about throwing the medicine ball, you're executing a powerful exercise and then you're releasing the load. It's almost the polar opposite of what you're thinking about kind of from a force velocity curve kind of situation. So I don't see it, no.
Okay. One I mean, not loved, but as an alternative, Lee Taft was showing some med ball work without actually letting the ball go. So I guess the idea was the intent, right? And we talk about power and this idea about intent. And so it would be almost like you're throwing the ball, but you end up, now I don't love that to get the full expression of power, but if you cannot do anything, I think it might work. I love your idea of the chest passes to the ground are awesome as well. What would be your idea? Have you seen Lee Taft's kind of the med ball where he doesn't?
I mean, and I don't, but again, to me, you're putting the brakes on at the end, which is what you don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would look at it and think, I'd almost rather, try to think about like diagonal slams. I saw some people doing sort of like a rotary slam pass in half kneel. I think there's things that you could do from a creative standpoint that what I don't like is people throwing medicine balls to each other rotationally, because if you've got soft toss, you may be okay. We used to do it with the hard balls and we broke some fingers, to be honest, when you start people really whipping those things at somebody else. So
if you have distance, you can do it. Like you can't just catch it though. It's got to be like at least like a one hop minimum, right?
Exactly. But I've seen people do it without that. And I don't know. I just don't, I want to see what his reservation actually is before I give a really free answer.
Coach, where are you? Let me ask you this. You were talking about, you had a nice run about the you asked the question, what are you doing for pre-workout? What are you guys recommending? We're looking for something that's safe. And there was a few really good answers. But one of the things is, obviously, we're going to come back to, staying hydrated and having a good breakfast, et cetera. But we know with high school and college kids, sometimes they're on the run. They don't always make the best food choices. Maybe they're coming in after class. What's really the kind of, is there a ready-made drink that you guys are using, or kind of something that to get them in there? What's the least that at least you'll allow for, with some of these, quote unquote, pre-workouts?
For me, the least I would consider acceptable is a cup of coffee or an iced coffee.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of caffeine, but beyond that, I would not, my problem with any, whatever, C4, I don't even know what people are using anymore from a pre-workout standpoint, but it's that slippery slope idea. When you tell me that I need some sort of substance to get me properly prepared to do a workout, that thought process makes me nervous. And because I just feel like you're on your way to being addicted. It's addictive type behavior. I need a bang energy, or I need this to get up, to be able to get hyped. It's not good. Because I think what happens is then you're going to find, okay, what are you going to use for games? You're going to have to use something much stronger for a game than you would for a workout. And it's just, me, I'm a big slippery slope guy, and I just feel like this stuff never goes in a positive direction when you start thinking about some type of substance that's going to change your mental state, because that's really what you're going to do. And I've linked to that podcast a bunch of times. I don't have the link info in my head, but the podcast that I listened on energy drinks, and it was somebody that was doing work for the Army, it's a little disturbing, particularly now we're talking about cardiac stuff, and you're talking about kids having cardiac issues at a really young age related to the fact that they're doing things. I mean, you can't get hyped for a workout with some sort of pre-workout formula that is not affecting your heart rate.
Yeah. You're right. That's exactly what my next point was with some of that too, is the heart stuff is like Bang. I actually will only drink Bang. I'm really pretty much against those things, but in a long car ride, I keep them in the car. I try not to have it, but it's like almost like in case of emergency, I open the Bang, because for me, coffee won't always work. So
Yeah, and I get that. If and this is the difference. If you're thinking the difference is dying in a car crash because I fell asleep and or taking a stimulant that might keep me awake, I am all for taking the stimulant that might keep me awake. Whether that's a Bang energy drink. We used to use years ago, I used to drive a truck for my brother, and we would use something called Energets. They were little caffeinated candies. They used to sell them at Howard Johnson's. This is how long ago that was, but at Howard Johnson's, they were, I'd buy a roll of Energets when I'd do these overnight sometimes for my brother, where I'd have to go and bring a truck to someplace here. I remember one night I had to drive to Syracuse. I had to drive 5 hours to Syracuse overnight, and I just sat there and I just kept taking these Energets, boom, popping them down, and that's not good for you. But my thing is, it's when you're doing this 4 times a week in order to somehow exercise, that to me is really problematic.
Absolutely good. I hope we're getting that message out there for people. So, Coach, thanks for doing this, and we will talk to you next time.
All right, Ant, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey guys, it's Vince Gabriel. Welcome to Business Secrets for Gym Owners. Recording this fresh off of our most recent mastermind meeting. 3 times a year, we bring 70 in person, but another 40 or 50 virtual together in a room and do big business building. And it was an incredible event with lots of really, really great speakers. And there's so many huge takeaways. And I always ask, the gym owners what their biggest takeaway was. And the most common takeaway was a concept that I taught called fake work. And essentially what I was talking about was a lot of us as business owners, we are just kind of spinning our wheels with what I call fake work. And fake work is work that you do that's not necessarily aligned with where you want to go. And so if you think about it, one of the most important things that you can have as a business owner is a clearly defined outcome of what you want to accomplish. And so, for example, like a lot of times gym owners will come to me and they have, 50 members, and they'll say something like, oh, yeah, well, I want to, start selling supplements, or I want to start adding this and adding that. And I'm like, at 50 members, like the only thing you should be thinking about is getting to 100 members. Like there's really nothing else. And once you have that goal of 100 members, all of your work should go towards getting to that 100 member mark. And that includes stuff you do to keep people you got, and includes getting new members. And anything that you're doing outside of that goal constitutes as fake work. It constitutes as just you're scrolling on social, you're opening up your emails, you're starting to do this, you're building out systems, you're doing all this kind of stuff, but none of it's really related to where you want to go. And if you really think about it, if you woke up every morning and on your to-do list were 3 to 5 things that were directly related to helping you accomplish the main goal that you want to accomplish, which I call real work, your life would be totally different. Your business would be totally different. And so like the analogy I use was like this. It's like sometimes that stuff is a little harder to do. It's a little more uncomfortable, right? It's if your goal is to get new members in, and one of the things you got to do is call past members or follow up with leads, like that's more uncomfortable. And the analogy I use is like this. Like let's say your outcome is the beach. And a lot of times there's on the beach, close to the beach areas, there's gravel roads, right? Roads that are gravelly. And when you walk on gravel with bare feet, it kind of like, it's uncomfortable and it hurts a little bit, but it doesn't hurt so much that like you can't do it. Right. But it's like uncomfortable. And you're like, I kind of wish I had shoes on, or I kind of wish that I could go over on the grass and walk on the grass. Right. And so you're like, but the straight line to the beach is on this gravel road. And picture the other side of it is like, oh, there's nice cushy grass on the other side. And you want to walk on that grass. And yeah, it feels better when you're doing it. But at the end of the day, it's not going to take you to the beach. It's not going to take you where you want to go. And so what you got to understand is you need to have this clearly defined outcome of what do you want to accomplish? What is it? Where is it that you're going? And what does it look like? And have it clearly defined. So it could be a number of members. It could be a certain amount of money, whatever it is. Whatever it is for you doesn't really matter. But just once you identify that, then all of a sudden the work you do every day needs to be towards that and not, messing around and tinkering with all this kinds of stuff that is not going to get you to what you want. Now, we did a whole presentation on this. It's a it's a bigger concept than what I explained today, but it was one of the biggest takeaways from the mastermind. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of explaining. So the big takeaway for you is when you sit down and write down the things you want to accomplish the next day, make sure it's real work. Make sure, one, you should be doing that, writing down what you're going to accomplish, but make sure the things that you're putting down on your list are actually moving you towards your goals, and know that a lot of times it's not the most comfortable things to do, and that's okay. So hopefully this was helpful. If you want more info and you also want access to the much talked about social media marketing template guide that I talked about on my full-length podcast, a ton of people have reached out to me for this. It's basically 37 done-for-you social posts that I'm giving access to people that do a trial at my Marketing Master Insiders Club. So just head over to club.vincegabriel.com to get that document. Peace.
Hey everyone, welcome to Getting Started with VBT or Velocity-Based Training, brought to you by Perch, a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. I am Nico Willett, and I'm the head of marketing and education for Perch. And in this new series on the Strength Coach podcast, we cover all things related to velocity-based training. This week, we're going to cover traditional periodization schemes and how to use velocity within those parameters that you're already familiar with. So let's dive right in. Periodization is defined in the NSCA text as the logical and systematic process of sequencing and integrating training interventions in order to achieve peak performance at appropriate time points. That's all well and good, but coaches are all too familiar with chaotic schedules, illnesses or injury, classes, games, tournaments, schoolwork, and on impacting performance, and the best laid plans often going awry. Moreover, periodization and programming often assume a perfect environment, and that is far from reality. And this is where the art of coaching becomes immensely important. Knowing when to dial back or to push hard is necessary when dealing with variable schedules, performances, and humans, obviously. Having a handle on the art of coaching and the coach's eye is huge, and having objective data to help you understand how hard to push is also pretty helpful. So there's myriad ways to implement velocity-based training, but in order to keep it simple when we're getting started, we always recommend using your existing program, your existing periodization model, and just spending some time gathering data using a VBT device. Once you have, trends will begin to emerge, the juices will start flowing, and you'll have a better understanding of how to incorporate VBT within your existing program. Ultimately, your understanding of periodization and programming really doesn't have to change at all, but the way in which you alter your training sessions for an individual can be executed with maximal precision and minimal intrusion by incorporating an objective velocity component. We also always say here at Perch that if VBT does absolutely nothing else, it helps two incredibly critical parts of weight room performance. Number one, it teaches you how to try hard. Objective feedback will make an athlete try hard and push hard. We see this with time sprints and jump heights as well. Understanding the quality of work done and providing a benchmark will inherently make an athlete want to best it. And number two, it enhances a competitive environment. So not only will athletes want to best their own benchmarks, they'll be able to see a data point for their neighbor and want to beat them as well. This levels the playing field for athletes who may not be lifting the same load, but want to be able to compete on velocity or even power outputs. So our starting tips for using VBT are this. Don't reinvent the wheel. Use what you have and use what you know and simply add VBT to it. Collect data, look for trends, and then start using it to inform your programming. In other words, just keep it simple. That is all for today. Thank you for listening. And if you have any more questions about VBT or want information and special deals, head to perch.fit/strengthcoach. That is perch.fit/strengthcoach. Thank you.
Welcome to the Fit to Speak segment. My name is Jenny Rarick, and today I'm going to share with you 5 presentation tips that you've probably never heard. Unless you give presentations regularly, when you are asked to give one, you'll probably do what everyone does when they're asked to give a presentation. You will Google how to give a presentation. But there's a problem with that. It's that the advice that you're going to read is washed out and it is really difficult to practically apply. The 5 tips that I'm going to share are practical and will truly improve the quality of your presentation and how you deliver that information. Let's get into it. Tip number 1, design your presentation slides last. The first thing most professionals do when they're asked to give a presentation is they open up PowerPoint or Keynote. I think this is a huge mistake. And there are 2 reasons why. Number 1, you end up wasting time creating slides that in the end you probably don't need. But because you invested so much time in creating them, you'll end up keeping them. And now you end up with a presentation that's overweight. The second reason is because how your slides look is really the least important aspect of your presentation. The story of your message, the quality of your information, and the strength of how you deliver that information deserve far more time. If you can get the story of your message down and have high quality influence devices, such as stories, examples, analogies, data, your slides will practically design themselves, so create them last. Tip number 2, plan to finish your presentation early. Commit to finishing your presentation at least 5 minutes before your prescribed end time. Unless you're a seasoned presenter, you're far more likely to run out of time than have time to spare. Something unexpected will happen, which will usually cause you to start later than you anticipated. And you're probably going to end up saying more than you originally planned to say. Nearly everyone does. Nothing is worse than ending a great presentation in a rush. When you end in a rush, you create a low-level anxiety among everyone in the room, and you lose the connection that you've worked hard to develop with your audience because your mind shifts away from them and on to getting through your content before your time runs out. If you've been given 60 minutes to present, build your presentation as if you've only been given 50 minutes. It is always better to finish early than late. Tip number 3, video record yourself practicing your presentation. You do things with your body and your voice when you present that you are currently unaware of. You might clear your throat or smack your lips at the start of each sentence. You might twirl your hair constantly. Maybe you play with your keys in your pocket. You might say or every other word. Trust me, you do something that is making you less effective than you think you are. The easiest way to catch these somethings is to record yourself. My advice, imagine you've been asked to record a 2-minute video of you describing your presentation to your potential audience. You're going to stand up and record that 2-minute video on your phone, hands-free. Then, immediately sit down with a pen and paper and answer these 6 questions. Number 1, what do I do with my eyes when I speak? Number 2, what do I do with my hands when I speak? Number 3, how do I stand, shift, or move while I'm speaking? Number 4, do I agree that I am projecting my voice? Number 5, do I hear myself pausing between my individual points while speaking? Number 6, what filler words do I use and where do they happen? Now, you might be wondering, well, what am I supposed to do? Here's the thing. Asking yourself these 6 questions, you will find something that you don't like or somewhere where you know you can be more effective. Answer the questions and you'll understand. I also offer speaking assessments. So if you've got a recording and you want my feedback, visit the skill programs page on my website. Tip number 4, check your ego. The best presenters are entirely focused on creating meaningful experiences for their audience. That's it. That's what they care about. If you're standing up in front of people thinking only of yourself, you will miss key opportunities to genuinely connect with the people in front of you. Don't spend 10 minutes at the start of your presentation talking about yourself. Unless you're some sort of celebrity, people don't want to hear about you. They want to hear your information. This doesn't mean don't introduce yourself, but people don't need to know your entire education and job history. How do you know if your ego is in charge? One sign is if you feel overwhelmed with fear or anxiety before speaking. This isn't obvious because most people think that if they feel nervous, it's a sign that they're humble, not ego-driven. But often these feelings of fear and anxiety come from a place of being entirely self-focused. Because as you're about to speak or as you're speaking, you're thinking things like, what if I mess up? I shouldn't be the one talking about this topic. Or what are they going to think of me? Will they like me? Do you hear all the I's and me's? They're all focused on you, not your audience. And finally, tip number 5, capture your experience. Plan to take 10 to 15 minutes immediately after your presentation to write down changes that you'd like to make to either your message or your delivery. Even if you won't be giving the same presentation again, there are lessons you need to capture. And if you wait too long, you're going to forget what those are. Sometimes I'll even pull up my presentation slides that I just gave and edit them on the spot. I do this because in my head after a presentation, the changes I want to make are clear, and I know that I'll probably forget them later. Get in the habit of capturing your presentation experience as close to the close of your presentation as possible. That's what I have for you today. If you liked what you heard, you would love my Speakers League. The Speakers League is a 12-week virtual cohort I designed to teach coaches and trainers like yourself how to create and deliver great presentations. It's a mix of live classes, self-study, and lots of application with coaching. Cohort 2 has an official start date of August 22nd, which is coming up, and registration closes on August 15th. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit my website, which is www.fit-to-speak.com. It's under skill programs, or you can email me directly at fit2speak@gmail.com.
All right, now it's time for the Naamly Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, brought to you by Naamly, the ultimate retention tool designed specifically for fitness coaches and gyms to help your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to Naamly.com. You can schedule a demo and get a feel for what you can do with this incredible tool. Use the referral code Strength Coach and get started on your free 30-day trial. All right, today I have on Dr. Emily Splichal. She is a functional podiatrist and human movement specialist. She's the founder of EBFA Global, the creator of the Barefoot Training Specialist Certification, author of Barefoot Strong, and the CEO and founder of Naboso Technology. She's got 20 years in the fitness industry. She's dedicated her medical career towards studying postural alignment and human movement as it relates to barefoot science, foot to core integration, and sensory integration. What I love about Emily is she's not just really kind of in her podiatrist office, just prescribing orthotics. She is moving, and she has an athletic background in gymnastics, and so to me it's this whole integration of everything. She's part of our industry. She was also in my book Be Like the Best, so that's probably what really skyrocketed her to fame, the 12 people that bought the book. So Em, thanks for doing this.
Of course, it is a pleasure, and it was an honor being part of your book. I was one of those 12 that purchased it. Just kidding. But no, this is going to be an awesome show.
All right. Well, like I said, number one, this is the hit the gym with the strength coach segment, but so I didn't want people to get fooled by just the doctor, the podiatrist piece of it. It's like, no, Emily has a really well-rounded background and does this stuff too, takes part in what we're doing, is part of all of the fitness conferences, knows what we're doing. And like I was talking to you earlier, I had Christopher McDougall on, who wrote Born to Run. This podcast is 15 years old. We had him on right when that book came out, before that book was popular. And we saw the popularity just rise of barefoot training, and the pendulum swung. Everybody was, getting the barefoot, the 5 fingers, the Vibram 5 fingers, and then people got hurt because they went too far into it. But, then we've only seen people really talk about foot strength. Then a couple of years back, we had on Anna Hartman. She was talking about the work of Philip Beach and how the foot is connected to the nerves of the spine and how it can help with back pain. But we really, when it comes to the mobility piece, we've only seen this idea about ankle. And like I was telling you before, I think maybe that was part of because this group, in this bubble, is thinking of joint by joint, and the foot was always the stable piece. Not saying it only had to be stable, but everybody was focusing on ankle mobility. And I love your 3 pillars of foot training, which is mobility, strength, and sensory stimulation. So there's this idea of this integration of everything, and that we can really kind of attack. So let's start out with that, and we'll go from there. Can you explain each part of the 3 pillars?
Yeah, so when I look at the foot from a functional perspective, from an athletic perspective, how do we get the most from our base of support, our foundation? The only contact point between the body and the ground is really thinking of it as a very powerful sensory structure. To me, that is activation. We have to wake up those nerves. It is a very strong, integrated strength structure that is connected to your deep core stabilizers. And then it needs to be mobile, just like all other aspects of the body. And the mobility of the foot is really based off of its capacity to unlock so it can load. Thinking like even just simple with the knee, right? Is, your knee has to have this controlled flexion component to it to absorb that potential energy during dynamic movement when you're running and jumping. Foot does the same thing. It has to be able to unlock and lock. So those are really where I start to look at the foot. And then those are the 3 principles or pillars that I want all strength coaches and trainers working with their clients and athletes is, okay, what am I doing to prep the foot? What am I doing to strengthen the foot? And then how am I making sure that there's optimal mobility so that it can, 1, recover, but 2, be a very powerful force transducer or energy transducer.
Do you think the mistake that people made after kind of the Born to Run, the popularity of the Vibram 5 finger was that they just went for that, like, we're going to get our feet stronger. We're going to start training in barefoot. We're going to start running in barefoot. And then they didn't tackle this mobility piece?
Well, really what I think it is that people were just looking at the tip of the iceberg. Meaning they were probably initially like, oh, I have a foot, okay? And this foot has muscles and it moves and it has nerves and fascia and everything runs all the way up the chain and into the pelvic floor. So I think that they were initially with the Born to Run focusing on the taken away the structure, cushion, integrity of traditional shoes. A lot of that is still referenced very mechanical, meaning I need you to spread your toes. I need your ankle to be in an optimal range of motion. Get out of the drop. That's really talking about the ankle so that you can get your natural range of motion. So it's still kind of like I'm saying, this tip of the iceberg, whereas I would go into there and say, okay, instead of it being natural to be able to spread your toes, take that back to function, and because function and control of our body is very neurological, okay, when you can splay and spread your toes and your metatarsal heads, which is called met splay, you are technically triggering the myofascial web that is found in the bottom of the foot. And our myofascia has over 100 million sensory nerves. So we are really accessing this myofascial neurological component of the human foot. So that's why I say that oftentimes people in the space of footwear, barefoot running is just the tip of the iceberg.
So where do you like really strength coaches listening, thinking, where do we really start with this? Is it just saying, okay, everybody, let's roll our feet and then we're going to start to train our warm-up barefoot, right? It's not that simple. Where do we start? I know obviously every foot's different, so you're going to have to look at that. But really from a general perspective, is it saying, look, we're going to have to prepare the foot. We want to get some working barefoot. We want to strengthen our feet. Where do we start?
Yeah, so I would appreciate the two aspects of the human foot, which is the sensory side and then the mechanical side. Understand ankle dorsiflexion, pronation, supination, flat feet, high arches, all of that mechanical aspect of the human foot, and then how it interconnects to the rest of the body from a joint coupling perspective. When I pronate or roll my foot inward and I evert my subtalar joints, that causes a coupled internal rotation of the tibia that could cause an increase in a valgus moment into the knee. What does that do to the pelvis? So that the coaches still understand the integrated kinematics of the foot in our foundation. But we still want to then also appreciate the other side, which is the sensory side, and saying, okay, I have these thousands of nerves in the skin in the bottom of the foot that weave into the fascia, and that the feet are fascially connected to the deep core and into the pelvis stabilizers. So if I want my athlete faster and to get faster glute activation, I can't just be looking at it from how much overpronation, how much internal external rotation, purely mechanical. I need to say, okay, there's certain fascial lines that are sensory driven between the feet and the core, and that sensory information to the foot drives small muscle contractions that activate the pelvic floor so that the glutes can contract stronger. So just having that appreciation. If I am getting an athlete out of their shoes, I'm not saying I need you out of the drop. I need you to spread your toes so you can just get a wider base of support. I'm saying that, but not purely saying that. I'm then saying, okay, I got you out of your shoes. What surfaces do I want you on? I want you on harder surfaces. I want you to get on texture. I want you to bring sensory stimulation to the foot. I want you to intently push your toes down into the ground while you exhale to connect your feet to your diaphragm. So I want a bigger, more impactful, integrated, just a completely different lens at which you would look at the human foot and movement. Sorry, I just dumped a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. Can you explain out of the drop, first of all, for people that don't understand that?
Yes. So most traditional shoes have a heel-toe drop, which means that the heel is placed higher than the forefoot or the ball of the foot. And the average shoe, a lot of people will reference a traditional Nike running shoe. This is when heel-toe drop really made its place within the footwear industry, was in the 1970s. There was the running boom. People were getting injured. So then they started putting a little bit of a drop, heel-toe drop, into the shoes to take tension off of the Achilles tendon and to put the foot in a more neutral position. So when you plant or flex your ankle, even a few degrees, every degree of ankle plantar flexion is coupled with subtalar joint inversion. So you are theoretically supinating the foot, or you're putting a supination moment on the foot. And this is used in podiatry all the time. If I have someone who has mild overpronation and I'm trying to take stress off of their plantar fascia on the bottom of the foot and their Achilles so that they can stand as a police officer during the day, I don't know, or a trainer, I will say, put a either a little heel lift in your shoe or go into a heel drop shoe, because I'm putting you in a more quote unquote stable position by just slightly supinating your foot. So it's a mechanical hack, or that's straight biomechanics 101. So by doing that, the footwear industry was hopefully trying to reduce a lot of common impact and running related injuries. However, what they saw is that most of the injuries still persisted because it was not just a biomechanical reason why people are getting hurt. And this is still today, 70 to 80% of runners will get injured when they run. So it's purely not a mechanical explanation on why people are getting injured.
So let's get back to the mobility piece. So when we say that's one of the pillars, what am I really focusing on from the mobility perspective? What should the strength coach, the trainer know from the mobility perspective? What needs to be mobile in the foot?
Yes, so you want to have, when I look at mobility, recovery, reset, foot resets, I want to look at the foot from the tips of the toes all the way to the ankle. We'll start with the forefoot. So from the digit perspective, I want to make sure that we are resetting, doing a recovery to the digits. I love toe spacers because they are an awesome way to just open up the forefoot. Oftentimes just going in wider shoes or getting the athlete out of their cleats or their skates isn't necessarily going to get that stretch and that spread and that opening up of the digits and the metatarsals. So I often will go towards toe spacers. For the next layer of mobilization, I like to literally mobilize, release SMR or trigger point release the tissue on the bottom of the foot. So this would be a 5-minute foot release to the bottom of the foot. I like to do pinpoint pressure release versus rolling the foot. I find that you get a much better release. Also, when you do pinpoint pressure, so let's say I stood on a half a neuro ball or a golf ball and I'm standing, I'm compressing the tissue, which means I'm also compressing the blood vessels. After I get off of the compression, I get a beautiful vasodilation and a rush of circulation to that area. So I really like to get sufficient circulation to the foot as part of activation and recovery, or the mobilization side to it. So getting into the bottom of the foot, then you got your midfoot. The midfoot, you really want to make sure that it can lock and unlock. There is a board called a Blackboard that it's a company out of Germany, and it's called the Torsion Board. And the forefoot piece of it and the rear foot piece of it rotate, they counter rotate on each other. And this is a great way to teach articulation and unlocking of the midfoot. I use that with a ton of my golfers because they just get really locked up in their feet and into their midfoot. And then for the ankle is making sure that you have obviously optimal dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. A lot of what I find where there's a limitation of both dorsiflexion and plantar flexion is that people will lose ankle joint centration, which means that their talus can oftentimes shift forward, and then they'll get a bony block because the talus is not centered in the ankle joint, in the mortise. So I do a lot of banded mobilizations with the talus or into the ankle joint to recenter the talus, get good ankle mobility, dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. You cannot forget plantar flexion, but plantar flexion is a tailor position game. And I think a lot of people don't understand that as far as getting optimal ankle plantar flexion. Blackboard, unlock the midfoot so it can lock and unlock is what I focus. Releasing the bottom of the foot, all the fascial tissue and the intrinsic muscles drive circulation to the tissue in the bottom of the foot, and then toe spacers to open up the forefoot.
Yeah, toe spacers are underrated. I use them, and I'll tell you, after sometimes it's like, oh man, these are hurting after a while, but they when I take them off, my feet feel amazing. So, when you were talking about the pressure, so you would say like most people, are rolling underneath the foot. You feel like you just want to kind of step on that ball or the half neuro ball.
Yes, correct. And what I will often tell people, so I used a golf ball for years. I've been releasing my feet for maybe 20 years now. And it is something that has saved me and allowed my capacity to stand long hours, especially in the hospital during residency. But it's something that is really good to warm up the tissue, maybe break up any sort of stickiness, and then to drive circulation. So when we roll, sometimes when you roll on the foot, you either don't get enough pressure, you are pushing too hard, and there may be some trigger points in the area, and you're creating a guarding response. So if you hit a trigger point, the muscles are going to rapidly contract, and you're actually making the issue worse than actually allowing a relaxation and a release to the tissue. So it's looking at it from a neurological approach versus a tip of the iceberg approach of, oh yeah, I roll my feet like a massage, not realizing that you actually have to influence the nervous system as part of this. And then with the neural ball, what is unique with that is that it's a think like a lacrosse ball that splits into two pieces. So you have half of a ball that would sit on the floor, so you can get a bilateral or a simultaneous foot release. What's nice about that is that the pelvis doesn't have to get hiked up in a weird way because you're doing 1 foot at a time with a large lacrosse ball. With athletes, I know you only got so much time. So I like to do things bilateral, check as many boxes as you can. And then with all the Naboso products, we have our texture. And the reason that we want the texture to the neural ball for this foot release is that you are stimulating the nerves and, most importantly, driving the microcirculation to the foot and the tissue.
Interesting. I never thought of this idea about the hip hike and only using one. So doing them both at a time would be really makes much more sense.
This is how nerdy I am, Anthony. Is the height of the neural ball, each dome, is 4.5 centimeters, which is the average arch height, so that you can release the feet and still maintain an ergonomic pelvis position is really important to me, because we don't want to be stressing other parts of the body by trying to do good to another part, right? So that ergonomic aspect was a big part of the design.
Excellent. Love it. So neural ball, they can get at your site, and Perform Better sells those as well, right?
Yes. So, Perform Better sells the neural ball, otherwise at naboso.com and on Amazon.
Okay, great. Now let's move into shrink. Like I said earlier, a lot of this idea, there was this just general, hey, look, go barefoot as much as you can. You're going to strengthen the feet naturally. That's all you really need to do. Talk to us about how you're strengthening your clients' feet.
Yeah, I think gone are the days of towel crunches and picking up marbles. What's funny is if you even look at like Pilates, and there's this foot corrector for Pilates that Joseph Pilates created, very isolated way of thinking about the foot and foot strength. It's kind of like doing a bicep curl instead of a pull-up. Right? We want to be training the foot in the way that it's actually going to integrate or be used in human movement and in athletic performance, which means it is a conduit of power and stabilization. It is our foundation, as I said. It's the only contact point between the body and the ground. So it has a very deep relationship to our center of mass, or our center of gravity, which is your core, or L5S1, between your ASIS, right? Which you look there, you got your TVA, right? So it's going to have a deep connection to TVA function, which means it has a strong connection to overall lumbopelvic hip complex stabilization. So the way that I train the foot is via different fascial lines, where the most common, or the first layer, is going to be the deep front fascial line from the tips of the toes through the bottom of the foot, your lower leg, your adductors, into your pelvic floor, your diaphragm, and then it runs up into the tip of your tongue. So by creating isometric tensioning activation techniques, you can then wake up, sequence, and coordinate your foundation to your center of mass. And that is really the foundational way that I look at the human foot. I build that into every single one of my patients programs. And then I build that into how I create other programming and then education for professionals such as who are listening now.
So expand on what this means. You said isometric, what?
Yeah, so isometric contractions from the foot to the deep core.
Okay.
And isometrics, this is really interesting. Isometrics have the highest potentiation on our fascial system. So whenever we contract our muscles, you are influencing your fascia. Makes sense because every fiber and fibril is surrounded by fascia. So this myofascial relationship, muscle contractions influence fascia. And the way that they influence fascia that I'm trying to access, especially as it relates to the foot, is from a tension perspective. I'm trying to create tension because that's going to translate to stability. For any of the listeners who have heard of tensegrity, right? Like a tensegrity model is this tension, this kind of interconnected tension that is balanced. And the way that we access fascial tension for posture and stability is really the stimulation of gravity. So gravity is coming down. Everything has to do with gravity, and we resist gravity through myofascial tone or tension. And I'm essentially trying to teach people how to dial that up strategically from the feet to the core so that you can really harness power out of your hips and your glutes.
So can you give us an example? And here's the example I want you to give is if somebody's actually listening, like at home or at a desk or whatever, and that they can do some kind of one of these exercises, what's something that you give your clients? Because I'm still a little in the fog here. I want to know what exactly you're prescribing.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the most basic one, which is called a forward lean. And a lot of these initially, when you are doing them, they're not that exciting. So just bear with me, everyone. Okay. Bear with me. So it is called a forward lean. What I would have the listeners do right now, stand up and kind of talk through it. But I want you to stand with your feet shoulder width apart, and you want to set your base. So find your foot tripod, spread your toes nice and wide. Ideally, I would want you to externally rotate if you're finding you're a little bit pronated or flat-footed. So just kind of externally rotate your hips a little bit to get your foot into a more neutral position. Soft knees, so we never want to lock our knees. Soft knees, stack your rib cage over your pelvis and your arms are by your side. So this is you in a stacked position. You're going to stay like that, stay stiff as a board, and you're going to gently rock your body forward like a lean, right? You're not hinging at the hip. You're staying stiff as a board, slight rock forward. As soon as you do that, you should feel that reflexively your toes are pulling down into the ground, and then go back into a vertical position. And then lean forward again, lean forward. Your toes are pulling down into the ground or pushing, pulling down, and then go back into the vertical position. So every time you lean forward, that pulling of the digits into the ground, it's a postural reflex. So it's built into our nervous system. This postural reflex of toes down is really this short foot isometric that I want people to start doing. Now, the forward lean helps people to understand that I'm not cueing a towel crunch. There's no grabbing, like curling around the ground. It is staying long, straight, and flat in your digits. And then the long flexors, which insert onto the tips of the toes, just pull or anchor you straight down into the ground. So if you understand that sensation, I now want you to just stand with your feet shoulder width apart and don't lean forward anymore. Just push your tips of the toes down into the ground. Can you do that same action consciously without leaning your body forward? If you can do that, then I want people to start to engage their TVA, then push their toes down into the floor. And you should feel that as you hold both, hold the TVA and hold your toes in the ground, can you feel them starting to connect to each other? And then I really want to emphasize that the part of the pelvic floor of this fascia line that's actually connected to your feet and your stabilizers is going to be your posterior pelvic floor. So if the listeners just kind of continue to join me, is I want you to relax your feet, relax your core. Now, step one, engage your TVA. So put some tension in your TVA, hold that tension. Now push your toes down into the floor. So the toes go straight down. You should have felt something happen in the core. I often feel that my tension in my core increases every time I push my toes down. Hold both of those. Now I want you to get your posterior pelvic floor. So you are going to have to lift your levator ani. And just to be crude, but the way that is you have to imagine stopping your poo. But you're lifting the levator ani. So now you have a third stack or layer to this. You should have felt more tension get involved. And then technically you could bring your tongue to your palate if you want. You should feel more tension. You could, if you had something in the hands, you could squeeze it. You could open your hands wide. And I'm starting to activate isometrically, intentionally, and integratively the base of support with your center of mass, and then continuing up that fascial line. So that's really short foot 101. And then there's a lot of peripheral side, very important detail that I would really add into this.
Awesome. I did the lean. I call it the Michael Jackson, right? I remember him.
Yeah.
He was able to kind of get that nice lean forward. That really, I like that because, like you said, with the towel, so it was just natural. So I felt those feet, right, all those toes going. When I did the second one, the standing and trying to push the toes in, I definitely felt like some weren't, maybe going in as evenly as maybe like when I did the lean. What would that tell me?
Yeah, so this is me doing a very quick intro to it. If any of the listeners are curious to learn more about the very detailed aspect to this, I teach this in all of my EBFA education. I have a bunch of YouTube videos that are out there really teaching it and demonstrating it. On my website, ebfaglobal.com, we have online certifications, all of that I really go into it. But this is where I would want to then step away and help that athlete or help the trainer coach who is eventually going to help the athlete or the client. Is I typically do 1 foot at a time because I need to get mind muscle connection. I then do focused pelvic floor awareness work, that if the individual doesn't understand how to differentiate or isolate anterior pelvic floor, posterior pelvic floor, what does it mean lift? They're just not connected to those muscles. Then I might need to do that first. And then if they're not breathing the right way, maybe I need to kind of weave that in as well. So it's where you would want to kind of personalize it or really understand that progressive, regressive aspect to something like this. And then, of course, depending on foot type, if they have a bunion, it's going to be hard to do this because a bunion inherently makes a foot slower and less stable. So would I want them in toe spacers? Most likely, yes. If they have an overpronated foot, I really need to make sure that individual understands what neutral is and can they hold their foot into neutral. We just developed these wedges that you can put under the heel at Naboso. We have these, so you could use those with the athlete or the individual to hold them in neutral. It's kind of like what an orthotic does. And that's where you can start to weave out and get a lot of the detail or the specificity behind this technique.
Excellent. Let's talk about now into this idea about sensory stimulation and where this all fits in, because like I said, this is so different because you're just totally connecting TVA, pelvic floor, diaphragm with what we were doing at the feet. So let's segue this into the sensory stimulation and what we should know about it.
Yeah, so everything is sensory based. I often say that sensory is what influences motor, right? So sensory precedes motor. So if you are trying to optimize the way that an individual is moving, right? That's the motor, that's the movement. You have to look at the quality and quantity of the sensory stimulation coming in. And then under quality, quantity of sensory stimulation coming in is you then have to say, okay, what is that individual's accuracy of perception. And I feel like I'm saying a lot of words that people might be like, what is she talking about? But if you are trying to bring in information to me, I'm the athlete, and for whatever reason, I'm in fight or flight, I had a concussion, I have chronic ankle instability, I might not be processing or perceiving that information the way you think that I am. So we can't just give an athlete information and think that they're going to have the capacity to utilize it, right? So we have to also take a step back in that direction as well. But just kind of initially, I look at movement and say, especially as it relates to the foot, is okay, can that individual even feel their feet? Are they tuned into their feet? Or have they been in cleats and cushioned shoes for so long that they have no awareness of their foot in space? And this is where you could compare someone who is always in shoes, chronically in shoes, has never done any footwork, and then compare them to like a barefoot modern dancer, right? Like a dancer can jump and move and do all these crazy movements and never be looking at the feet in the ground. And they know exactly when the ground is going to touch their foot. And they're not even looking at it. That is the type of foot awareness and perception that I need in the shod athletes as well. So that is saying we need to be looking at the sensory processing perception in these athletes. So get them out of their shoes, get them into a more minimal shoe, do barefoot movement prep, then go into the cleats or the skates. Because I understand certain sports are shod. They got to get back in the shoes, but we have to be doing barefoot work. When you get them barefoot, you have to make sure that they are on different surfaces. They are using the Naboso textured mat. They're using vibration platforms. They're going on turf. They're going on the hardwood basketball court. They're walking across pebbles. They're moving the digits. You, the coach, are referencing the foot, right? Look at your foot. Look at your foot touching the Naboso texture. Feel, consciously acknowledge that you are feeling texture in your feet right now. So sometimes it's not just deliver the tool that's going to provide the information, but the coach is the one that harnesses the power of cueing and guiding the consciousness and the awareness of the athlete into the stimuli as well.
Here's the thing is that we do have to get back into the shoe. So what I was wondering is it like there was some research on unstable surfaces, for example, and what they said was what that does for you is it gets you better at unstable surfaces. So if we're doing this barefoot work and increasing this sensory stimulation, then when we put our shoes back on, we still have this effect to the foot and it's going back to the way it was. Is it really helping us when I have the skate on or the cleat on?
Hands down, 100% yes. Because if I do that, the first 15 minutes before the athlete puts on their shoe, cleat, skate, whatever it is, I've brought that awareness to the foot. And even though these are restrictive footwear, they can still kind of slightly wiggle the toes every once in a while, right? Still kind of get a little bit of intentional digit flexion into the skate or into the cleat to reprime it. Of course, this is not going to last the entire game. So the neuroactivation may start to kind of trail off to the end. But then honestly, every neuroactivation that you're doing is trailing off by the end of the game or the session because they're starting to get fatigued. So everything is slowing down. But accumulatively, if you start every session with a barefoot movement prep, that athlete is inherently going to be more foot appreciative, foundation tuned in, and it's going to have more of a accumulative effect. And I have many, for some reason, very much within the hockey space, a lot of hockey coaches and trainers that say, ever since I started moving my athletes barefoot on the Naboso, on the side of the ice before they get their skates on, it has made a profound difference in these skaters. I have skiers who say the same thing. They're like, if I stimulate my feet before I get into the ski boots, makes a profound difference to how I sense and connect as I'm, going down the slopes or whatever, so it seems like if I'm going to be going into something stiff and cushioned anyway, then those efforts are futile. And that's not necessarily true. Right. So
yeah. So
I would still say it's important.
Yeah. So let's talk about this now. So like for some of you, like I have golfers. So so ideally say, okay, cool. Before you get on the range, now I know you did a study but for some people, they might be like, no, I don't want to change my routine. Not routine, when I have that golf club in my hand, they don't want to change that piece of it. But if I added this to the warm, I said, look, here's the Naboso mat. You're in your hotel room before your match. Let's get you, like before you go over and start hitting some ball, in the locker room, let's say, get the Naboso mat out, do some work on that, then put those shoes on. Now you can go and hit some balls. Is that what you would say? Is that the recommendation for that?
Yes. If they're not willing to put the Naboso insoles into their shoes, then 100%. Then at least do a little bit of movement, do a foot release, do that 5-minute neural ball foot release. Even if that's all you did, and then you went into your shoe, then I would be happy.
Cool. So foot release into the mat. And then now with the soles, I know you have socks too at Naboso too. So now, because some people might say, look, I don't want to, or the soles aren't really going to work if I have socks on, right? I mean, so when you did the golf study, were they barefoot was their barefoot inside the shoe, so no socks, and then the Naboso soles?
No, so they actually wore thin socks, is what we said. So put them in your golf shoes, wear thin socks. And all of the 50 participants had never used Naboso before. So that is someone that I typically find, just from years of doing this, that when someone is brand new to the Naboso products and brand new to feeling sensation and being forced to tune into the bottom of the foot, they typically can feel it through thin socks.
Yeah.
Me, I am on this stuff all day, and I'm just testing out some new socks that we're looking to design. And I was like, I cannot feel anything with these thin socks on. Like, I cannot feel the texture. But I think it's different because I'm always barefoot on it. So yeah, we say thin socks if you're going to be on it, or like you said, we do have our socks that we will have people train with those socks on to get the stimulus directly into the skin.
Love it. I think it's there's some easy strategies here that can really help improve that awareness, especially for a sport like golf or hockey, right? That they especially, it's such a big part of, and I shouldn't even say every sport is like that. I shouldn't even say that, but I know for golf, it's like you're in this stance, and there is like the foot pressure is switching depending on who your teacher is. Like there's different pressure in the foot, and to really understand where that is, I think golfers have such a great awareness. They need such a great awareness of that foot pressure that this could really be a game changer for golfers.
Yeah, and the other way that you could think of it for the listeners that may be more the golf coach or the golf trainer, right, is you could use it as a training tool for some of your golfers that are having a hard time feeling and connecting to that subtle weight shift. And then as they understand the timing, because you're helping them, you're forcing them to feel their feet through the texture, maybe they don't need to use it anymore, right? They could, or you could say, I'm just using this as a tool to help you really feel and connect to all four corners of or aspects of the bottom of the foot. And that's what I say with the mat as well, is it could be used as a cueing tool to teach people to feel where their passive body weight sits. A lot of people don't realize that.
Interesting. Such great stuff. Let's just finish up on this idea about, still I want to stay on this sensory stimulation. Are you being prejudiced to the hands? Are you like, because isn't there a lot of sensors in the hands as well? And are we missing something, or because we're on our feet so much that obviously the feet are super important, but is there something we should be thinking about with the hands as well?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that. And no, in no way am I forgetting the hands. We actually have a tool for the hands, which is called our sensory sticks. It's a 2-pound weighted stick that we use to activate the hands. We developed it initially for the neuro rehab space, but we have a lot of, CrossFit, Olympic lifters, golfers, racket-based sports that will activate the same way as part of their movement prep is stimulate, activate, and get the 17,000 mechanoceptors in the hand activated and warmed up. So for sure, Neuroball can also be released. You want that same fascial tension that I spoke about. So the short foot. I was just at Idea World and I did a session called Get a Grip, and it was all hand-based. And I showed the parallel between the feet as a foot to core tension sensory structure and the hand to shoulder to core as a fascial tension structure for stabilization and neurosensory stimulation. So such a perfect segue to that session I did. And these parallels that exist between the feet and the hands.
Very cool. So you won't get canceled by the hand people. Good. That's good to know. Great stuff. Em, let's just this is what I want to finish up on, just because this might be something of interest to the listeners. Obviously, there's Barefoot Strong, but I always like to encourage the workshops. Just give us an overview of the Barefoot Training Specialist certification.
Absolutely. So our BTS, or Barefoot Training Specialist, level 1, level 2, online and in-person certification. Majority of those are online, of course, nowadays. EBFA Global. It is two parts or 2 levels. First level focuses on sensory and stabilization. So it's going into how the brain processes sensory information, the unique neurosensory structures and aspect of the human foot. It goes into foot anatomy, how to do a foot assessment, foot biomechanics. So the whole diving down, geeking out on foot anatomy and true foot biomechanics, foot typing, foot programming, that is all in our level 1. And then our level 2 brings it into dynamic movement and movement efficiency. And that is looking at gait, the phases of gait, how to do a gait assessment, how to determine gait optimization from the ground up and top down. So I look both. So it's very heavy pelvis based as well. So those are 2 levels to what would be a really powerful, invaluable certification, I think, for all strength coaches and professionals, just because the foot is so complex and powerful. Very
cool. And what's the website that we can really get all of this from? I'll have links on the site.
Yeah, it is EBFA Global. EB is in boy, FAglobal.com. And then that also links, like I said, to our YouTube that has many, many videos. There's probably over 200 videos. I do free webinars, once a month to get just kind of that curiosity going, new ideas I'm playing around with. I put those out in webinars, and those are recorded, and those are on our YouTube as well.
Very cool. Doc, thanks for doing this. Thanks for always putting out so much information. This is not just get my certification. You have a lot of free information out there, and you've done an amazing job teaching fitness professionals and the world about the foot and the importance of it. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, and I hope the listeners enjoyed.
All right, that's going to do for episode 339 of the Strength Coach Podcast. You can try out the new strengthcoach.com for 7 days for free. Totally new format, user-friendly, same great forum. As always, it's the place where top coaches in the industry come to connect and learn. To access that offer, go to strengthcoach.com. Click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. Special thanks to Chris Pryor and the folks over at Perform Better. The huge summer sale is going on right now, 40% off a ton of items. Don't miss the last summit of the year, guys, August 26th to the 28th in Providence, Rhode Island. Check it all out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Dr. Emily Splichal for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning, performance enhancement, and the foot. Thanks to Naamly, helping build relationships through personalized communication so your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to Naamly.com, use the referral code STRENGTHCOACH to get started on your free 30-day trial. Thanks to Vince Gabriel and KISS Marketing. If you need some help with your marketing, head over to Fit.net to book a free coaching call with Will Matheson. He's going to take a look at your current marketing plan and give you some real-time profit-boosting advice. Check it out at kissmarketing.net to book your free coaching call. Thanks to Nika Willett and Perch. Perch is a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. Head over to perch.fit/strength-coach to find out more about it. They have some great videos showing the cameras and how to use it. Thanks to Jenny Rurick of Fit to Speak for coming back for this month, her Speakers League 12-week virtual cohort where she teaches coaches and trainers how to create and deliver great presentation. Starts on August 22nd. Check it out at fit-to-speak.com. My name is Anthony Revan. Check out the show notes at continuefit.com or strengthcoachpodcast.com. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.